Hello, fellow travelers. Welcome to Fate's Wide Wheel. I'm your host, Sam Fain. And this week I'm here to talk about The Family Treasure, episode 10 of season 2 of the Quantum Leap revival. I'm really excited about this one for a lot of reasons. Some personal, some just as a part of this passion that is our love as a collective community and fandom of Quantum Leap. I think The Family Treasure overall is a fantastic episode. It's a lot of fun. It's a wonderful adventure, has an excellent sense of humor about itself, some wonderful moments for our series regulars, some great moments for our guest stars, and I just think some important moments, frankly, as loaded a term as that might be for network television, primetime network television. And I had the great fortune of speaking with Shakina once again about her episode. Of course, she's the writer, and it was such a joy. And so I hope that you'll check that interview out if you haven't already. She was just amazing, of course, and getting to talk to her about the genesis of this episode, her inspirations for certain scenes or themes, just the overall plot arc, the way that the episode fits into season 2 on the whole, at least as much as we can talk about it thus far. Was just wonderful. And of course, being able to talk about some of the issues that were raised, the history of the episode, the affirmation that, trans people are not new. We have always been here. And the opportunity to explore that from the perspective of 70 years ago, when a vocabulary that we have today did not exist, and to see the way that that was handled so gracefully, so wonderfully, so emotionally, so touching. And it's just a thrill. So much about this episode was just such a thrill. So I'm looking forward to talking more about it. Before I do that, I did want to mention a couple of other things. First of all, shout out to the folks over at the Quantum Leap Project. They have been doing some awesome stuff, including the director's commentary, which, of course, is something that, I think both shows had talked about doing separately, over the past year. I know that I mentioned it, I think, probably about almost exactly a year ago, wanting to do that and hoping to have the opportunity during hiatus to do that. Unfortunately, there were strikes, so it never really came about to do that for season 1. And when it comes to my time and my resources, I just don't have the bandwidth to do that right now, for the most part. So I'm glad to see them doing it. They've also done one for The Family Treasure with Shakina and Jude Wang, the director of the episode. So I haven't had a chance to check that out. I've heard a little bit from Albie about it, which is exciting. So you certainly have to check that out. They released a new banner recently, about being, we are the bonus features. And I'd like to say that I think that applies also to Fate's Wide Wheel. I know Matt, whom I love and miss dearly, and I, on this very show on Fate's Wide Wheel, talked about that multiple times, about how, our shows really have been the bonus features. And it's something that Shakina touches on in the interview that I did with her, the desire for those to exist. But unfortunately, in lieu of NBC, producing anything official, you get Quantum Leap Project and Fate's Wide Wheel. And I'm thrilled to be able to be a part of that and to have the access and the opportunity that I do have to speak to these amazing, creative, wonderfully talented human beings who are so passionate about this show and know their shit. I know there's some of you out there. I'm talking to you. No, not you, but you. I know that there are some of you out there that question, their passion sometimes and their knowledge of Quantum Leap in general. But there's no doubt in my mind that the passion exists and the knowledge exists. And I've had conversations, off the record conversations with folks where they are specifically citing episodes of the classic series, if not as inspiration, but, maybe as a parallel in some way. And it's always so wonderful to hear and kind of geek out over, because it's a reminder that, that's one of the things that ties us all together, both the people making the show and the people watching the show. So, always a thrill to be able to do that. And again, I really encourage you to check out the interview with Shakina. If you haven't had the opportunity to do so, go back and check out the interview with Alex Berger from last week. I loved conducting that interview. It was such a joy to talk to Alex. And I thought that there were a lot of really great points, not only about Off the Cuff, but just season 2 in general, and some tantalizing hints. Not really, about where things might be headed. And the same thing with the Shakina interview. I feel like she drops a couple of hints here and there that are certainly perhaps, it might shed a little light on the direction that things might go in some instances, which is really cool. There's so much going on. I hope people are paying attention and following, especially Instagram. I feel like the Instagram accounts have been such a wonderful source of information and peeks behind the scenes right now. Both the official NBC Instagram account, and of course, I would, if you're not already, follow Raymond Lee, follow Caitlin Bassett, follow Mason Alexander Park. Specifically the three of them are posting a lot of stuff. Nanrissa posts stuff on occasion. Ernie Hudson's official channel posts stuff as well. Drew Lindo is obviously posting a lot of stuff, or had been. I mean, now that things have kind of wrapped, it's slowed down a little bit. But there's just wonderful stuff out there on Instagram, and of course, QLP is posting stuff. I'm posting stuff. So follow those Instagram accounts in particular, because there's just a lot of really wonderful stuff about the show, behind the scenes looks, promo pieces, promo videos, which there have been 3 that have aired for the family treasure, which you've already seen the episode at this point, so you don't necessarily need to see these promo videos. But I just cannot help but think that all of the amount of promotion that NBC has been doing for Quantum Leap this week specifically is a wonderful sign. I feel like there's definitely a strain of optimism that is running through a lot of folks right now, in spite of, seeing some conversations on social media, on Facebook. Specifically, Facebook seems to be where a lot of that pessimism or worry or concern resides right now, which is fine and fair and totally, worth talking about. But again, I'm not in, save Quantum Leap mode yet. I am in show your love for the show, write those letters, make those posts, go for it, go all out. I'm just not quite to the save Quantum Leap level yet. And I don't think we need to be. So, take that for what it's worth. But there's just been a lot of wonderful information out there. By the time you're watching this, you'll have seen the preview for The Outsider, episode 11 of season 2, 211, directed by Deborah Pratt, written by Margarita Matthews and Remy Park. That teaser is something that I haven't seen, so I have no idea what they've shown. I don't know much about the episode at all. I was trying to wrangle one of the guest stars' names, but I was unable to get it before recording this. So all I can say is I have a feeling that 211 is going to be a fantastic episode. I've certainly heard some scuttlebutt about that. You've got a great creative team already in place on that. I mean, with Deborah directing, I've heard that it's a smaller story, a little bit more contained, perhaps, than some of the other leaps that we've had recently. Not necessarily a bottle episode, if you will, but I can only imagine that there's going to be some incredible follow-ups because of the way that this episode ends, and we are certainly going to talk about that. So, is there any other news and notes that I wanted to mention? No, of course, by the time I release this, I'm sure there'll be something. That's just the way it always happens, right? But I hope you've had a wonderful Tuesday, a wonderful beginning to your week. I'm so grateful that you're joining me. I think in the spirit of Quantum Leap, we always want to spread kindness and appreciation any way that we can. And we certainly want to try to set right some things that are going wrong. So I would encourage you, of course, to look around your community, see what's happening out there in the world, see if there are ways that you can step up, see if there's ways that you can offer help and aid, whether it's volunteering, donating food or clothing, or if you're in the financial position to do so monetarily as well. If you want to look at the world at large, of course, I will always throw my support behind the Trevor Project, which I think with this episode in particular is even more salient. And I think that the work that the Trevor Project does is incredible and wonderful and essential to the livelihoods, the well-being of trans youth in this country. And I think that what happens, what we see in this episode is the Shekinah-esque Care Bear stare of love and joy. And unfortunately, sometimes it goes the other way. And with an organization and a charity like the Trevor Project, which works so hard to make sure that when that story does go the other way, that there are systems in place that trans youth can have the support that they need, is vital, and it's important. So if you are so inclined, that is certainly a charity that I will always throw my support behind, as well as, of course, Doctors Without Borders. They do incredible work, life-saving work, terrifying work at times, in terrifying places, and they certainly need our help. I will also, in the memory of our dear friend Matt Dale, mention Epilepsy Foundation UK, which I know was a cause that was near and dear to his heart. So if you are so inclined to make a donation to them across the pond, feel free to do so in Matt's name, in his honor. That would be lovely. If after all of that you would like to support this little old podcast, your podcast host, they would appreciate it. And you can do so, of course, by visiting patreon.com/fateswidewheel. At any monetary level that you donate, you will have full access to all of the behind the scenes poster videos that JJ Lindell and I have been doing. Shout out to JJ. He's been in Disney World the past few days doing some signings of his incredible work and having a wonderful time with his family, which I think is fantastic. And I'm very happy for him. We have not, unfortunately, had the time or the ability to do a poster reveal video for The Family Treasure, but hopefully you'll be seeing it before this episode airs, if all goes well. If not, I'm sure he'll have it out, like Wednesday or Thursday at the latest, and we will definitely do a behind the scenes video for that. There will be exclusive content, or at least early content, available on the Patreon after the finale airs. I'm hoping to be able to bank a lot of interviews, and I want to kind of parcel those out over time, since there won't necessarily be a lot going on to talk about right away. I'd like to take those interviews and kind of hold on to them for a while, but I will release them early for Patreon subscribers. But it's not an exclusive. None of that content, none of the main content, Quantum Leap related content, will ever be behind a paywall. It will always be available. It's just, this is a way to kind of give Patreon members a little bit of early access. So there will also be more stuff, hopefully, in the future for patrons as well. Watch parties have just not been a viable option for me, and I do apologize for that if anyone has been waiting for that or hoping for that. With everything that I've had going on recently, it's just not something that I can do. I even for tomorrow, I have tonight, as you're watching this, I have auditions and stuff that I'm attending, so I just won't be able to be around for that. But I certainly want to try to find the way to keep the conversation going any way that we can. So feel free to leave a comment. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you so much. Hit that like and subscribe button. Really appreciate it. Feel free to email the show. Or reach out to me on social media, either Instagram or Twitter. You can even, holler into the wonderful world of Reddit, post something in the Quantum Leap subreddit, just shout out Fate's Wide Wheel, and I'll see it. I'll be there. We can continue the conversation over there. I love the conversations that are happening. Love all the theorizing that I'm seeing. It's incredible. People are talking about the show, I feel like, more right now than we have, obviously, for a good 6 weeks or so, which is wonderful and encouraging. So yes, if you are interested in supporting the show in that way, I cannot thank you enough. It is truly humbling, and it means the world to me that people are willing to help make sure that this show can continue on, because from a financial standpoint, it can get a little cost prohibitive for me, and I can certainly say that through the generosity of listeners and viewers, I am able to not have to take any money out of pocket to pay for the services that keep the show running. So I thank you so much, patrons. You'll find your names, of course, below or on the show notes. But yeah, I just again, sometimes I'm blown away by the fact that people are willing to support the show in that manner. So thank you so very much. I really truly appreciate it. And again, after you are finished righting some wrongs, head over to patreon.com/fateswidewheel, and you can subscribe again at any monetary level, and you will be granted access to everything that is there. So thank you so much for that. Let's move on, shall we, and talk about The Family Treasure, written by Shakina, directed by Jude Wang. This is the 10th episode of season 2 of Quantum Leap, and we find ourselves in 1953. Again, just right out of the gate, I had so much fun watching this episode both times that I watched it. I think that the overall plot of the episode holds together so well. It's got some wonderful, fun twists and turns, but that thematically, what really holds the episode together, as far as this family having to affirm the importance of their connection with one another, and not letting life get in the way of that. It's just a wonderful through line, told beautifully. And of course, we get some wonderful character moments along the way. We have an AFAB transmass non-binary character in 1953. How cool is that? And we have a woman in a horrible marriage that she thinks she is duty bound to stay in, because that's just what the patriarchy says. Still to this day, that's how some people function. And I think that to see it from this lens, and to see the way that these sisters and siblings support one another is really wonderful. And I think that being kind of the spine of the leap is incredibly successful. When we look at the HQ stuff outside of that, holy shit, there's some big stuff that happens in this episode. And I think that last episode we saw Hannah, which is always a big to do, and we get the big information. Oh my gosh, she's married. She has a son. It's not Ben's son. It really isn't. That's not. Just stop, okay? And then of course we get the information, sadly, that her husband Josh will pass away due to a heart issue in just a year and a half's time, as of the end of that particular leap. And Ben wants to do something about it but can't. And I think that when we see Ben in the initial moments of this episode, that is still weighing on him quite heavily. And as the will is being read, and their inheritance is kind of being parceled out, Ben is clearly only half present, which is really interesting. And I think the dynamic of it's very subtle, but I think that what Ray does in those opening moments, supported of course by the script and some of the other things that happen, especially once Addison pops in, it's really wonderful, because you can tell that he's still fish out of water, right? Like normal when he first leaps into a situation, but on top of that, there's this other thing working at him, gnawing at him, and the stakes are super high in that. And I really just loved how that played out in a very subtle manner, while not drawing focus from the kind of the exposition, the setup here of what's going on, which I thought was also handled very well. And we get these clearly defined character moments as well, which was done very, very well. Sarah, played by Holly Bear, I thought, we just get, we know who she is right away, which is lovely. Dean, they have, this wonderful moment when they're given the baseball glove, and, they say, dig it. And again, we just get this kind of this window into someone that has an identity separate from the way that others perceive them, which is an important aspect of the character going forward. And of course we get the reveal that there are clues hidden inside these gifts, not just clues but pieces of a treasure map. How wonderfully Goonies-esque, Indiana Jones, just bam, which of course reels me in right away. Let's go ahead and talk about the project just a little bit. And I know I'm kind of flying through some of this stuff, but it's because there are some things that I really want to talk a little bit more about, and I don't want to give short shrift to some of these wonderful, nice moments that are happening early on. But let's jump back to the project. Of course, one of the things that we got left with was the proposal, and Addison saying yes to Tom's proposal of marriage at the end of 209 off the cuff. And here we see the two of them happy, and we see the two of them sharing that with Jen and Ian and Magic. The reactions are very interesting, especially Magic's. Magic has been a pillar for Addison in so many ways over the course of this season. He has encouraged her to follow her heart. He has encouraged her to live for the moment. And I have to be honest, his actions within the course of just this scene alone have me questioning if what he was actually talking about this whole time was Tom. It's weird, because he even has a line in this scene about how this is about their love. Much to Ian's chagrin, because they are talking about how they want to plan the wedding. Wedding planning is their love language, which is hilarious, and Mason is awesome. But it's just fascinating to me, because I couldn't help but walk away from this scene feeling like Magic was not on board with this. He was being supportive. He was being, I think, what he thought they needed, Tom and Addison, what they needed. But there was something about the look on his face, the delivery of the lines, that just felt a little non-committal about the situation. Almost like he knows what's coming, which was really lovely. And again, not what I necessarily thought it was going to be. What's also interesting is we get conversation after this between Jen and Ian, where Ian is kind of pushing Jen in a way that says they think Jen's not on board with this, and Jen is like, no, I think it's great. I'm team, Addison and Tom now. It's going to be fine. And while Ian is doing this, they, of course, I think are in that position of being supportive. But again, I couldn't help but walk away from it feeling like both Ian and Jen, while talking about being supportive and wanting them to be happy and liking Tom, there just seems to be a little something with all three of these, HQ members that they're not all the way in. That the subtext, beneath all these positive comments of what they're saying is, I miss Ben. And I think Ben and Addison are the couple, not Addison and Tom. And maybe that's me projecting, because one of the things that happened over the course of this episode after Off the Cuff, which I thought was fascinating because of some of the things that happened in Off the Cuff, obviously with Hannah, have me reinvesting in Ben and Addison. And not that I ever, completely divested myself of their relationship. I've always kind of hoped maybe that they would find their way back to one another, and yet was also okay if they didn't, especially with the nature of Ben and Hannah's relationship and the way that has just sparkled over the course of the season. But I kind of, again, I could be projecting, but I almost felt like the characters were feeling similar to how I was feeling. That they're okay with Addison and Tom, that they think this could be good for Addison. And Tom is, Tom's a good guy. He really is a good guy. I know, but he really is. And yet there's this feeling of kind of like, it should be Ben, which is actually kind of lovely. And it's wonderful the way that they're supporting their friend, and yet at the same time holding that little piece inside saying like, we miss our friend, and we miss our friends being together as a couple. So yeah, I felt like there was a lot going on, and it was wonderful. And I think that, we see the beginning of it here. Caitlin gives an incredible performance over the course of this episode. She really does, because so much of what she does is devoid of dialogue. I mean, yes, she has dialogue in the episode, and yes, it's wonderful, and there's some incredibly funny moments that she has, but the character arc that takes place for her over the course of this episode is done almost completely without dialogue, until, kind of like her final scene in the episode. And it's wonderful work. It really is. So kudos to Caitlin, because I think that it's very difficult to do, especially in scenes where you're not the focus. And in some scenes, and kudos to Jude Wang for this as well, because, and maybe it was written this way, so to Shakina as well, there were times when Jude clearly made the decision to put the focus on Addison in spite of the scene still taking place in the background. There's some stuff where that happens, like in the caverns, and it's really wonderful. It's excellent storytelling. And again, Caitlin rises to the occasion to be able to tell that story simply with her eyes. And it's beautiful stuff. Back to the leap, of course, the adventure is on. After some cajoling, they all get together and they're like, all right, let's do it. Let's go on this treasure hunt. This is, of course, after we get one of my favorite comedic moments, probably just in general, in the revival. I mean that. It's right up there with some of the best Ian moments, because, let's face it, they bring the funny. And it's this wonderful moment where Addison and Ben have stepped away and are discussing everything. And Ben, of course, has this wonderful moment about like, hey, why couldn't I help to save Josh? And Addison has this lovely line about, the accelerator, we don't get to choose who we save. The accelerator kind of does that for us. And I think that, excuse me, that it's just this really wonderful moment, this idea that there is this metaphysical aspect of leaping that they don't have full control of. And I know that there are people out there that would say, well, now wait a minute, Sam had control of his leaping, but it's like, did he? Because yes, that's what we're told in Mirror Image, but we've also been told some things that feel a little contrary to Mirror Image by Deborah Pratt herself on this very show, where she has mentioned that she doesn't see Sam leaping as himself, that he is still leaping and inhabiting other people, walking a mile in their shoes. and maybe he has some control. Like clearly he has the control to go and speak to Beth as himself, and and tell Beth what's up, and get her to wait for Al. But yeah, I don't know. Until we see something definitive on screen, which we may never get, I just think it is up for debate. And I think that the way that the show kind of leans into that aspect is also fascinating to me, and feels more akin to the classic series than Mirror Image did in some ways. Not that I'm dismissing Mirror Image. I mean, I think Mirror Image is fantastic in many ways, and I mean, I love the ending. It made me cry. It gutted me for the longest time. Still kind of does in a lot of ways, but I don't know. I just appreciate it so much, and I love the ending. But anyway, that's neither here nor there, because the comedic moment that I was talking about occurs when Dean and Sarah are fighting, and and Ben is trying to kind of figure out, do I find the treasure, or get these siblings together? And Addison, they stack their heads out the doorway, and Addison kind of says, it might be easier to find the treasure. And the look on her face, the delivery, the way that their heads are poked out from the door frame is just, it's just brilliant. It's wonderful. It's a great moment, and I laughed out loud both times that I saw it. So anyway, now we're down in Mexico after this, and we get one of our first big obstacles, which is of course the theft of the bag and the map by Ricardo, who is up to no good, flirting with Sarah, being tall, dark, and handsome as he is, almost devastatingly handsome, and the flirtation with Sarah is enough to distract, I think, everyone, because Dean and Ben are kind of like, whatever, let's go look at the pictures on the wall and find Dad. And sure enough, they do. And Sarah comes over to join them. And when she does that, the bag gets stolen, the map gets stolen. Ben, has this wonderful moment where he set up this gag of going, finishing school, learning these things in finishing school. Nadia, who he slept into, failed to mention that earlier, and I love the way that gag is set up and pays dividends throughout the course of the episode. And when it does, it's Ben drawing this map from memory, because of course he has a photographic memory, just like our other favorite leaper, and redraws the map with the clues. They realize the well, well concealed. Oh, this is the clue. We've got to find that well that Dad's standing by, and they're able to do that with through the map. They find the well, they go down into the well, much to after Sarah's protestations, they find a rope. The rope is just so happens to be there, which was convenient. But they go down into the caverns, the tunnels, and again, we're just getting some wonderful moments between these siblings, and Dean and Sarah are clearly having difficulties. Sarah is dead naming Dean. Dean is really after Sarah. And the interesting thing is never once do we get the feeling that Dean's like, just leave your husband and change your life, take hold of your life, do this, do that. Instead, they really are kind of throwing a lot of shade at Sarah for the choices that she's made. And the way that they kind of belittle one another and bicker with one another is very affecting, because it's clearly a case where these people don't understand one another and don't understand the positions that they're in. And I think that that's kind of lovely, because as they're having these discussions and they're having this back and forth, I think Ben starts to realize more and more what they each need. And it reaches fever pitch once they exit the tunnels, which we'll get to in a moment. But while they're in the tunnels, there are also still some wonderful moments where you start to see the connection between these people. One of those moments, of course, happens when Sarah gets the key, right, and sticks her arm into the hole, and in a very Indiana Jones-esque way, and then plays the trick on them that her hand's been caught. And Dean, it's funny because they actually kind of like that Sarah has a sense of humor about this. And it's wonderful. I don't know. And then of course Ben delivers the very funny line about how it wasn't that funny. It's just a wonderful moment. The beats are so perfectly played, like it's just like boom, 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 and I really appreciated the sense of humor about it all. Of course, at this point, obstacles arise. Ricardo shows up with a gun, and so does Mr. Wells, the lawyer. Ricardo is killed, and Mr. Wells turns out to be a dirtbag. And throughout all of this, eventually there is a cave in, and Dean, dives for the key. They get the key, but unfortunately they are wounded during the cave in. Sarah is mortified by this, and I think that again is where this genuine sibling connection starts to come through, and you start to realize that all of this bickering, all of these low blows that they've been exchanging throughout the course of the episode thus far, it's born from a place of hurt. It's born from this wedge that's been driven between them because of their different outlooks and their different perspectives, but that what ties them together is stronger. And I think that that's an incredibly valuable lesson, whether you have a sibling or you're just a human being existing in this world. And I think Shakina has a wonderful way of telling that story, even subtextually throughout the episode. At this point, they're able to escape the tunnels, and once they do, Dean's shirt has been torn, and their binding with the elastic bandage is seen by Sarah, and Sarah points it out. This scene is so incredibly lovely for so many reasons. It's the interplay between all three of our characters, Sarah, Dean, and Ben, and then what's happening at the project between Jen and Ian watching. It's just like this perfect, symphonic visual. It's like this, it's amazing. The way that it all ties together, and the way that these human beings are relating to one another, the conversations that they're having, the reactions that are being provoked, to the genuine emotion and honesty that shines through, is so lovely. And as Dean struggles to explain who they are to Sarah, Ben steps up, and Ben's an accomplice. As was established in Let Them Play, Ben now has the knowledge, the vocabulary, and he had that really, I think, before in some ways, but now, to quote, Ian, Shakina, Ben has some skin in the game, right? And the way that Ben relays this information and gives this vocabulary and this knowledge to Dean and to Sarah is so lovely. And the way that he does it by way of Ian, and talks about my best friend at finishing school, which as soon as he called them Ian, as soon as he called them his best friend, like, it just, this well of emotion just existed inside of me, because I think that it's something that we've not been reminded of as much throughout the course of this season as we were in the first season. There were multiple touchstones where, Ian would say it, or Ben would say it, by the time he realized, who Ian was and everything. It's like, wow, their friendship was incredibly important. To the point that, there was a moment when I might have actually kind of shipped Ian and Ben, and maybe in some ways still do. You never know. But this moment was so beautiful, because the way that Ben facilitates this coming out with this incredible sensitivity, and this incredible amount of heart, and the way that it sparks this joy within Dean, and this acceptance in Sarah. Just seeing the way that this works together is so beautiful. And then seeing Ian's reactions to all of this, and Mason, what they're able to do in that moment is so beautiful. The Way to Go Ben song line is incredible. The acknowledgement of the history of this moment, Ian's line of trans mask in the 50s, and Jen's knowledge as well, being like, hey, aren't the bindings dangerous? And again, Ian, like, good eye, yes, but there weren't a lot of other options at the time. And that reminder that, when the people existing in this life, and at this time, that the options were so much more narrow, that the finding the fit was so much more difficult. but that doesn't take away the fact that they existed, and that the stories that come down for 50, 60, 70, 100, 200, 500, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 years of human history, and trans people existing throughout that entire timeline, and having to find ways to exist. And at sometimes in that history, it was much easier to do so. But in the 1950s in conservative America, it was incredibly difficult to do so. And there were support systems, luckily, but it was also illegal. It was illegal to wear a certain number of articles of clothing, of the opposite sex of what you appeared to be. It was illegal to be gay. It was illegal to have sex. It was illegal to make love to your partner. And the world had a much more narrow perspective. And unfortunately, that meant for some folks, that was thrust upon them too. That perspective was thrust upon them too. And they had to struggle to define who they were. And in Dean's case, we get this wonderful moment where they have an accomplice and a facilitator in Ben, and Ben is able to, to kind of hand off this information, and to see, Wilder does such incredible work here, because there, that euphoria, that joy, that understanding, that empowerment is so visceral and so real. And they do such an incredible job in that moment. And I love, obviously, like Holly's work as Sarah, her reactions to them are really beautiful. And in that moment, it's about these siblings, and Ray, uh, kind of being the facilitator and the accomplice to that. And also in this incredible way, filling Nadia's role. And who knows what Nadia would have been like in the original history, right? We don't know that, because in the original history, Dean went down by themselves and got lost and never returned. So who knows exactly how Nadia would have actually facilitated any of this given the opportunity. But in this instance, Ben gets to kind of, be the best version of Nadia, which really is this lovely moment between these siblings, Ben included. And I just love the scene so much. And I cannot state enough how much I love Mason's work in the moment, and how the combination of all of these things is so incredibly moving and so incredibly touching. And I think in the course of these couple of minutes, we get that heart and that history and that humor and that hope. And those four H's are just there in full flush, and it's gorgeous. And it means a lot. It means a lot to someone like me, especially someone like me who, was unable to articulate my own gender identity until I was 40, and to be able to go back in time in my head and realize all of those moments, those potential moments when, if I would have had a Ben song, if this version of Quantum Leap would have existed when I was younger, how that moment could have potentially come earlier for me, and that unfolding could have happened even prior to this. And so I am so thankful and I am so grateful to this moment to exist on primetime network television, and to see it done in such a beautiful way. I can only hope, and I can only just hope that there are other people out there that will see this, and that maybe they'll have that unfolding, maybe they'll have that turnkey moment, and be able to get the vocabulary and the joy and the euphoria and the empowerment to be who they are, and that also others will see that and be able to accept people for who they are, will be able to put themselves in Sarah's shoes and be able to have that moment where, where they can see someone close to them for who they truly are, and use their name and their pronouns, and be okay with that, and realize that spine, that love, that humanity, that kinship that connects us all as human beings far outweighs any of the, ideological differences or ignorance that might come to bear on these situations so often. And so it's just such a joyous moment, for me personally, and the impact and effect that people like Shakina and people like Mason have had on me personally by way of this show and being able to facilitate and empower. It is true. It is real. It actually happens. And I can only hope that this moment will ripple out, and and Shakina's Care Bear stare of love and joy will radiate in such a way that there are other people out there that find something that they need from this moment, whether that be their own empowerment, their own euphoria, their own vocabulary, or their own ability to accept others for who they truly are. I think it's possible. I know it's possible. We get this amazing moment for Sarah too, where Sarah decides that she's leaving her husband Douglas, and it comes in a moment of just her own empowerment, like seeing her sibling empowered and being able to kind of say, like, we should be able to live the life that we want to lead. And the way that ripples out, of course, to somebody like Addison as well. It's a great moment. And of course, Dean has the wonderful line. They say, you just had to steal my moment. And apparently that was an ad lib from Wilder, and they kept it in, which is lovely. But yeah, what a fantastic moment, and just I think an emotional climax in some ways for the episode, as it pertains to the Leap side of the story. Eventually they get to the church. Once they're at the church, they are able to, find the treasure chest, and it's empty. But of course, in the midst of all this, they also unlock one of the waterways for the dam, and water comes into the dried up city, which is also interesting. And you kind of wonder, like, I wonder what effect that will have, impact that might have, on the future. But there is a letter in the bottom, and that letter is, basically a confession, from a father to his children, saying, I realized too late the most valuable lesson. And part of this mission that I've sent you all on was so that you would have the opportunity to realize it before it was too late. How important, family and home is. And I think the wonderful thing about kind of the meta side of this and the subtext side of this is that it's not just about siblings, right? That family, you choose your family. And sometimes that means the people that you are related to. Sometimes it doesn't. And it's the same thing with home. You choose your home, and your home could be the road. Your home doesn't have to necessarily be a house with a picket fence or whatever. But I just think that, again, on sort of that metaphorical level, there's this beautiful subtext at play with the idea that, family and home are incredibly important to the fabric of who we are. And a life devoid of that might be a life a little less worth living, quite frankly. And I think that, what dad leaves behind for them is an incredible gift. And more. We'll get to that. One of the things that, of course, is happening at the project during all of this is that Ian gets a phone call from Rachel, and Rachel is very distressed. Apparently, her boss, Gideon, has figured out that somebody has been, in his system, and he's not happy. And there's going to be repercussions. And Rachel is, terrified. What Alice brings to this at the moment is just, it's pure terror at what could happen. And Ian, of course, they are scared for her, for the situation. And Jen, of course, is like, you got to come clean. Like, you've got to tell Magic what's been going on. We don't necessarily get the opportunity for that, however. Kind of side by side with a lot of this, again, we're getting that Addison story. And part of what we're seeing from Addison is the realization that not only is she still in love with Ben, but that, which I think has always been on the table, quite frankly, but that now there's the real possibility that he could come back. And what does that mean? And, we saw a little bit of it in last week's episode off the cuff, but I think she kind of went so in the other direction of just being like, it doesn't matter. Like, I've made my choice, and my choice is Tom, and I know that he wants to marry me, and I'm doing this. This is the thing you do. And it's interesting because it is kind of that weird parallel to not that I think Tom represents the patriarchy or anything like that, but it is this interesting parallel to like Sarah. It's an interesting parallel to Dean in some ways too. The idea that it's like, I have to fit into this structure that I've created for myself, or that has been created for me by circumstance, because Ben got lost for 3 years and I declared him dead, and I moved on with Tom. But we see that erode throughout the course of this episode, and the realization that all of this stuff, all this information about, you only get one shot, and you have to, live your life, and you have to live your life with the people you love. It's really starting to kind of come to the forefront and gnaw at her, to the point where, she breaks things off with Tom, and we get this incredible reaction from Tom. Tom clearly isn't happy. Tom is clearly like, I got to get out of here. I got to go back to DC. But it's also handled in this incredibly sensitive manner where it's just kind of like, I need to let you go so that you will understand that I'm the one that's here. And not in like a defeated, kind of like, I'm your only option, baby, or whatever. But I don't know. It's just an incredible moment. Peter does a wonderful job with it, and it's really well written, and it's a very sensitive moment. And again, it doesn't, it does not eschew any of the real, genuine emotion of the moment. It does not, stifle any, I think, what Tom's natural reaction, the disappointment, the sadness, the hurt of this moment. It's all there. But there's also something maybe a little bit more noble at play, maybe a little bit more caring at play, maybe a little bit more honestly loving at play, which is a great moment. And I think it puts Addison in a really interesting position, right? But Addison also affirms with Ben, I'm not going anywhere, later in the episode, which is also lovely. Once they get back to the house, Ben writes a letter, and he asks Sarah to mail it in 20 years. And I got a lot of feelings about this. First of all, I love it. It's a great little Doc Brown moment, right? Back to the Future nod. I love it. It definitely feels like something Ben would do. It's also kind of a nice nod in a way to the leap back. And that's the way that they get the imaging chamber open for Sam. But it also feels, it raises some incredibly wonderful ethical questions, which I love, is the intent, I think. I don't think that, the creative people in charge of this are not, they understand that. And so to see Ben make the choice to do this, you start to wonder, should he do this? Is this okay? If the accelerator decided to leap him out at that moment, maybe they don't, God, time, fate, whatever, doesn't want Ben to stop this for whatever reason. Is this a situation where, because Josh passes, Jeffrey goes on to do this, or Hannah's life goes this way, or whatever, or you hate to think that could ever be a possibility. You want people to be able to live, and obviously the circumstances that have affected this community, this podcast, QLP, and everything that we've been affected by recently. You just shudder to think that there's a case where someone's early passing would ever be justified for any reason whatsoever. So purely from a storytelling perspective, you just kind of have to wonder what would the repercussions of this be. The big question I have, of course, is who opens this letter? Is Hannah the one that gets the letter? Married couples sometimes open one another's mail, right? Sometimes kids open their parents' mail. I think Josh is going to read this before Hannah does. And I'm really curious as to what the repercussions are going to be. And I don't know if we're going to find out in The Outsider, but boy, do I wonder. There's clearly so much stuff coming. I have heard some exceptional things about the season finale. You will hear some of that from Shakina in the interview if you haven't already listened to it, because She had the opportunity to shadow Chris Grismer and was there with Drew Lindo, who wrote the episode, while the episode was being made. Wherever we're headed, I think the implications of this, the ripple effect of this moment, are going to play out in very interesting, devastating, fascinating, amazing ways. And I am incredibly looking forward to it. I'm so invested. I literally, and I respect everyone's right to their own opinion. If it's not for you, it's not for you. That's fine. But I literally do not understand how, if you've watched this season, you could not be invested, especially at this point, like fully invested in where this story is going. The character driven arcs that we've gotten for the bulk of the first like 2/3 of the season, now playing out and affecting this plot arc that we're starting to get, is just wonderful. The way the pieces are all coming together. And I said this last week and I'll say it again, the opportunity to go back on Peacock right now. You want to help the show? Go back on Peacock right now and start watching season 2 from the beginning and start following these threads and seeing the way that these pieces are coming together now, because I think that it has been masterful the way that this has been plotted out. And it has not been too in your face. It has not been too nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Hey, look what we're doing here. It has been done beautifully and subtly and intentionally. And I love that. And kudos to the team for putting that together. So now let's get to the big finish. Gideon. Okay. I get the screener. I hit play. They've been doing this thing on occasion where they'll post like some spoilers at the beginning of the screener. So I literally put my hand in front of the screen like so I will not see what the spoilers are until the episode proper starts. Episode starts, I see, kind of the previously on Quantum Leap, see the leap in, cool, it's good. They get to Mexico, those credits start popping up. I see all those familiar names, all these people that I'm so fortunate to have the opportunity to talk to. It's like, cool, great. Oh, the actors, yes, wonderful. Oh, the guest stars. I should probably start taking some notes, right? Get out my old Kindle Scribe here, get my little stylus, start taking my notes. And then I see it. James Frayne. And I think to myself, okay, with what I know about this episode, like, I don't think that, like, that's not a guest star for the leap. And that's not a guest star that you just get in a one-off. Like, that's a get. That's Sarek, from Star Trek Discovery. That's Spock's dad, right? In Paramount Plus world. That's Thomas Cromwell from the Tudors. Like, I mean, come on now. What a wonderful, incredible, get for the show. What an immensely talented actor. And if you've ever seen James Frayne in anything, you know that he is often very different from role to role to role. And this is no exception, because when Gideon Ridge walks in to the HQ, to the control room, whoo boy, I mean, it's electric. And just, I mean, already potentially my favorite guest star in Quantum Leap ever, because I'm just looking at him and I'm like, oh, where is this gonna go? And how terrifying, for everyone. Like, Rachel is there, and then here comes Gideon, and here comes Gideon's people, and Jen and Ian and the whole team. Like, what the hell is going to happen next? And that's where they leave us. And holy shit, again, big moment after big moment after big moment. And I think that, we're in the end game now, right? Like, every episode is going to have those moments. 9 had them, 10 had them, 11's going to have them, 12's going to have them, 13 is going to blow your freaking minds, my mind. And right now, the show deserves all the watching. And if you have somehow stumbled onto this podcast for whatever reason, and you were watching this and you're thinking to yourself, oh, I should check out that Quantum Leap, you're damn right. You should head over to Peacock right now, watch every single episode of this season that you have yet to see, and then watch it again, because it deserves to be seen. And I am so excited at the prospect of more stories getting told by this team in this world with these human beings. I think that all bets are off going forward. I think that this is a season where potentially not everyone makes it out alive. I thought that in season 1, but I really think it here, and I don't know what the hell that means. I think that there's going to be some game changing stuff. Part of me is speculating that somebody else steps into that accelerator at the end of the season, maybe Addison, that things are about to change, and the harbinger of doom within Project Quantum Leap is Gideon Ridge, as played by James Frayne, and I'm so excited to see what he's going to do next in this role, and how everyone is going to react to that. So bring on the outsider, bring on the last 2 episodes. I am all in, and I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to not only talk to people that are involved with this show and bring those conversations to you. I'm grateful for you being here to share that with me, because the power of community and the power of this like energy that's flowing between us all as we experience this show is very real, and it's very palpable right now, and it is shared with the people that create this show, and it is wrapped up in all the people watching the show. And so yeah, I'm not going to belabor the point. I'm stoked. I'm excited. I didn't use my notes at all, so I'm sure I missed something. The flood scene. I meant to ask Shakina how they did that, because it looks so good, and I just really enjoyed that particular moment, and I missed it. I missed talking about it here, and I missed talking about it to her, but I'll throw it out there now for you. But yeah, obviously I continue to be all in. I'm so excited. I'm excited to share it with you. I want to know what you think. Please leave those comments. Hit that like and subscribe button. Follow me on the socials. Find me anywhere you want to continue that conversation. I've got to get over to Al's place. I'm going to post this over there amongst other things, so I can start talking to people over there as well. And yeah, check out again what QLP is doing, because they're talking to some great people, talking to guest stars, doing their director's commentaries, and I cannot believe, as this drops, there's only 2 weeks left in this season. 3 episodes in 2 weeks. It has come way faster than I think I expected and anticipated. The work that is being done right now, they've stopped shooting, but there's all that post-production stuff to do. So people are working really hard to bring you this. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for you once again. So with all that said, thank you so very much. Keep watching Quantum Leap. Keep hitting that download and that like and subscribe button and supporting the show. I really appreciate it. I love being able to talk to you. Take care of yourselves. Take care of one another. Stay safe out there. And remember, always, always, unlike most of the people in the show that we love, both iterations, always leap responsibly.